Hello, lovely, and welcome to your solar return reading. I want to wish you an early happy birthday because that is coming up very soon. So that is exciting. Now, for this solar return reading, as it is for all solar return readings, it's going to begin the day of your birthday and then it's going to proceed all the way into the end of the year for your birthday, meaning that it will end for on February 27th through March 27th of 2021. So we're going to go ahead and talk about the wheel that's outside and on the inside. So let's first discuss the inner wheel here. This is your actual natal birth chart. So this is what the planets looked like on the day of your birthday. And then this outer wheel here is your solar return chart, meaning this is what the planets are going to be doing the day of your birthday. So what I do is I read them both and see how the energies are working together, and then that tells me a lot of information about the year to come. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's dive right in. So this year for you, you have perfected, and that is like an old Hellenistic term, but that is in regarding to which house you have moved into. So it's called perfected. And so every year we kind of experience a new slice of pie of life. All of these houses hold themes of life. So every year we move into a new house, and those are pretty much the dominating themes for the year. Now you have perfected into a 12th house year. Now, the 12th house is usually known as a time of reflection and doing things away from society. This is a house that's not very active. It's a little more kind of hidden away. It's really a time to step back and away, going more inwards and retreating. It's got more of a quieter tone to it. The focus here that I always like to tell people for the 12th house is a lot of self-care, a lot of self-maintenance. So, you've just come away from some really active, busy years, and this is kind of a time to kind of go into your cocoon. The image that came up for you, which was really beautiful, was like this blue chrysalis butterfly kind of going into that cocoon. You've already gone through 12 years, which it takes, right, to go around a whole cycle of the chart. You've done a lot in the past 12 years. And so this is essentially a step where you kind of go back and you rejuvenate. There's a rebirthing process that takes place for you in order for you to then come out as a butterfly for the next 12 years and go through the whole cycle again. So even though this is hidden away from society, there's a lot of inner working that gets done. And even though sometimes the 12th house can be considered a little bit problematic because it's almost like you're not actively engaging in, let's say, your life pursuits and goals, because you're really kind of taking a step back, doing a lot of inner work in order to be able to blossom and come out as a brand new butterfly. So that's really something that came strongly for you, and it keeps coming through. It's this beautiful blue butterfly, like I don't know, are they monarchs? I'm not sure what that blue butterfly is, but it's a gorgeous butterfly. And this is really going to be kind of a cocoon year for you. So the 12th house is considered to be one of the least functioning and potentially problematic houses. And this is only because you aren't going to feel necessarily as well seen this year. You may feel more like you're in the shadows. And that's only because, again, you're doing a lot of self work and maintenance and just really spending a lot of time away from society. However, again, you can take advantage of this time to be more productive when it comes to your work and life path. And we're going to get into that a little bit only because this house really can impact that 10th house. So it's a lot of work being done, not like actually at work engaging there, but behind the scenes. So I do want to make that clear. I want to talk a little bit about what's called a time lord. Now, every time we perfect into a new house, the ruler of the sign that rules that house, for you, it is the Capricorn. You have what's called a time lord, and the time lord is the planet that rules that sign. So for Capricorn, that is Saturn, meaning that this year into the beginning of your next birthday, you're going to have Saturn as your time lord. So anything that Saturn does for this year, and even Saturn in and of itself, is going to be kind of like a dominating spirit for you. So it's even, I like to even tell people to set up altars to their time lords for the year. Saturn, he does have an angel that corresponds to him. It's Archangel Cassiel. So that's something we can also talk about at a later time. I can tell you how to set up an altar, but that's something you may want to work with closely so that Saturn can actually work with you in a cooperative way. Saturn can tend to have a bit of a heavier vibe. So because you, again, perfected into that 12th house, we have Saturn as your time lord. So here he is, but in this solar return, he's actually over here, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So let me see. I do want to point out that Saturn years, for the most part, tend to bring a little bit of a heavier tone. Now, this may be something that you notice, and it may not be something that you notice, only because, as we've discussed previously with other readings of yours, you actually have a Saturn that's very dignified, is what it's called, because you have Saturn in Capricorn, in the house of his joy. So he is really in his house of rulership, under the sign that he rules. He's actually quite comfortable in that position. And this means that even though Saturn tends to bring very harsh lessons, you are used to this. This is all you've known. You have not had an easy breezy life. You've had more challenges presented to you in your life that have really built who you are. So when you have a Saturn year, you may just feel actually more aligned with who you are, or you may feel like certain themes tend to kind of come up and repeat themselves, almost like forging that metal, like you're still getting kind of worked on, and it can be difficult. But at the same time, I would venture to say that you're used to this because, when you have Saturn as such a dominating planet in the chart, usually this person, being you, lovely, you're already used to the challenges that Saturn kind of throws at you. Like, you have to work really hard and really confront a lot of really heavy things in life, okay? So keep in mind, for a lot of people, Saturn is a little too oppressive and way too serious, and it can feel very harsh. But for somebody who's already used to that natally, it doesn't present such a problem because it's something you're already used to. You can just say, I've been there, done that. So you've already gained a lot of wisdom from Saturn. So what I like to do when I'm comparing this, one last thing, I do want to point out, even though you may be used to the seriousness of Saturn, is that because you've perfected into this 12th house and you also have Saturn in that house, it's like a double dose of Saturn this year. So what that can do is it can kind of stir things up. It can bring more challenges and even a lot of changes. So that is something to kind of keep in mind, and also in the background to really not be totally, have it not take you completely off guard if things like that happen again you've been through a lot of similar things, and you're going to work through it, and things are going to be just fine. So I do want to just point that out, that it's like a double dose of Saturn. So things may feel a little difficult, especially the beginning of this year. Things are going to ease up later, but the beginning of this year might be a little kind of rough. So let's go ahead and look at your, let's see here. I want to just point out one thing. We're going to look here at your natal Saturn, which is here in Capricorn, and then this is your Saturn in the solar return. So this is significant in many ways, which we're going to dive into that. But the one thing I want to make clear here when I'm looking at a solar return chart is, as you can see, your birth natal is right here, and there's almost like this wall, right? And then we have this new Saturn right here, or for the year on the other side of the wall. So what this means is that they can't see each other and communicate with one another. And so what this can actually represent in a reading is that there may be some distractions this year and potential tangents to your goals that you have in place. So usually, again, it's not a very productive year for like your goals and aspirations. You may have some distractions or some themes that are more, some parts of life that are more of a priority that come up that you have to kind of deal with. Again, you have perfected into that 12th house. So again, it's not really a really full-on functioning type of year where you're like, trying to climb up the corporate ladder, that kind of thing. It really is a time where you're moving away again from the public eye and also doing a lot of inner work, but also at the same time, there may be some added distractions that are kind of keeping you from being in line with kind of life path goals and that sort of thing, at least at the beginning of the year. So that's something to keep in mind. So I also want to mention that if you have maybe some side projects that you're focusing on instead, that maybe that is going to be more of a dominating theme. So it's just kind of a little more of a distracted year. So we'll look at this later on in your reading. So again, this isn't always a bad thing. It just denotes potential delays and blocks in what you had originally planned, and maybe something that you planned last year going into this year or at the beginning of this year. Things are just going to kind of shift for you. So with that being said, I want to mention something that's quite relevant here, because this is essentially transiting Saturn. And as you can see, your natal Saturn's here. This means that you're going through what's called a second Saturn return, which I did mention in a previous reading that you were about to encounter. This is going to be happening, actually it just happened for the first hit was in February. I'll give you that date in a bit, but it's going to be happening for this the entirety of the year. And this is quite significant because again, we have a third layer of Saturn for you. You have a lot of Saturn energies this year. So you, let's go ahead and see here. So we're going to get onto the Saturn return in just a minute because I want to cover a couple of other things here. Okay, so even though we're going through that Saturn return, I want to mention the moon before we actually dive into that Saturn return. Okay, so as you can see, here we are. The Saturn, your solar return chart, you have the sun here and the moon right here, meaning that this is a new moon for the year ahead for you. It's significant whenever I see a new moon or a full moon, because the new moon in a solar return chart typically signifies new beginnings. So there's going to be a lot of seeds that are being planted. You may be starting new things, starting like a new phase in life that you're going to see the developments of later on. And it could be even like later in the year, into the beginning of next year or even moving forward. This year is a lot about new beginnings. It's interesting that the moon is in the 4th house. So new beginnings, specifically even dealing with family and the home, your private life. So it makes sense that you have this year where it's more kind of away from the public eye and maybe more focus around the home and new beginnings and new seeds being planted here, new experiences with your home and your family. So that is something that's exciting. Like, you may not see the full developments right away, but you will towards the end of the year and moving forward. So lots of new seeds being planted, and that is very exciting. So let's get into your second Saturn return, because this is something that is very relevant. Let's talk a little bit about that. I think in the previous reading, one of the ones that I did discuss it a little bit, but essentially when you go into your second Saturn return, you have already fulfilled the responsibilities for the most part of being an adult, and that usually is due after your first Saturn return, which happens around the age of 29, usually around that age between 28 and 30. When you have your first Saturn return, you graduate into what's called adulthood. Usually you take on what's called a responsible burden. Usually people buy a house, have children, get married, go back to grad school. There's usually something that develops that you are committed to for the long-term goal, right? And so with your second Saturn return, you've already done that. It's been about 28 years. So now you are graduating into essentially elderhood. Now this is really significant because it's more of a time where you are focusing now on not what is expected of you, what society expects for you to do. You've already done that. Now it's a time to really focus on what it is that your heart wants to accomplish this time around. Saturn definitely represents our legacy, what we leave behind. Saturn reminds us that we are mere mortals and we only have so much time on this plane. So Saturn really comes in and says, hey, you've already been responsible, and that's, some people aren't, and so you kind of get some disciplinary action there, but you, for the most part, at least everything I've seen, you are definitely a responsible adult. You have been, more so than ever, especially because of that Saturn. So now Saturn is saying, you really need to step back. Let's get away from what is expected from you, what you think you need to be doing, and you really need to turn back to yourself, your self-development, what it is you want to accomplish for the rest of the time that you're here. Now, this can be, again, your book keeps coming to mind here, because sometimes when we are being the responsible adults, we take on a job that's going to, pay the bills and do everything to provide for our family. And sometimes what our heart desires, if we're not in a field that we're passionate about, and if it's not our life's work, we put things on the back burner that we really are passionate about. And that could be for you, let's say your book, right? So now it's a time to kind of focus on your book or areas of life that are your passion, what it is that you want to do in this lifetime. You are going through a new phase of life that is going to be about you and not so much about others and the responsibilities for others. So the responsibility comes back now to you and your self-development. What is it that you want to build? So that's really, really important. Now, this started, you're going to get a few hits this year only because Saturn will be going retrograde, so meaning it's going to go back and then forwards and that sort of thing. So right now, Saturn already passed your natal Saturn. It was in February of 2020, so that's last month, and it was through about March 10th. Now it's going forward, but it's going to be going retrograde come this summer, so it's going to hit your natal Saturn in July 15th through the 31st. And then because it goes back direct, then it's going to hit one last time in November 24th of December 10th. So this is really all year long. You are going to be getting, you may notice kind of a heavier tone. You may be getting these reminders of like, okay, what is it that I really want to be doing now with my life? So this Saturn will sometimes, the reason why he gets the reputation of being kind of a disciplinarian and a heavier type of teacher is because sometimes he cuts things away from us, and it's really for our own good, because that really helps us realign with our purpose. So this could mean that things that have been distracting you for quite some time, driving you away from your life path and goal and passion, tend to kind of fall away. Some people end up quitting jobs. Some people's schedule tends to change, like you lose hours or something that may look like, oh my gosh, this was not what I wanted. But in the long run, it ends up being a blessing in disguise. So these may be constant reminders too, or maybe you constantly have this nagging feeling that you need to be doing something else. And again, this is going to fit in nicely because you are in this cocoon phase of your life in this 12th house. So really a lot of planning coming into play. This is really a transitional year for you personally, doing a lot of soul searching and soul work and where you need to move next, and even moving away from things that are restricting. Saturn can be very, how can I put it? He can be very compassionate in the way that I like to call it serious compassion, because he really can cut things away that seem harsh, but in the long term are good. So you may experience some endings. He does tend to represent restructuring after ending other things in life. So that's something to watch for, themes this year, okay? So now what I want to do is move into your chart month by month. As you can see, we're going to start here in that 12th house, beginning March 27th through April 27th. You're going to be experiencing these 12th house themes, and then it moves in the way this works from April 27th through May 27th. You'll be in that first house, May 27th through June 27th, second house. So we move around the chart this way, and that is what we're going to get started now. So what's interesting is that your birthday is going to take place very soon here, and in that 12th house, the 12th house tends to be, it rules actually places that are hidden away from society, like hospitals, institutions, prisons. And this can also be the deep psyche, okay? So this is usually where there's not a lot of active, heavy activity in the public arena. This is why it's considered hidden away. So what's interesting is that we are experiencing this horrible pandemic right now, forcing us to almost be, I hate to say it, but almost imprisoned in our own home, and because of the quarantine. So this can be a month where you are actually physically experiencing that in your home, and that also kind of beginning the turning of the wheel for you internally. Like maybe during this time that you're spending away from the public eye, you're starting to tune in more into your own voice and your own, you're starting to really kind of reflect on life. It's really a time of introspection, and really you're probably going to end up coming out of this with a more clear vision of what it is you want to do, specifically because of that Saturn return. And what I mean to do, it's really like with your life. So it's got that really heavy yet necessary vibe to it, which I love. 12th house years again, or the 12th house usually is a great time to learn new ways of meditating or spending more time in a meditative practice, spending more time in prayer. It's really a quiet time, seeking solitude. And you may be getting that anyway because, again, you are spending more time at home. So it's interesting how that's happening physically as well as it, you'll experience it emotionally and psychologically. So keep that in mind. A lot of kind of soul searching happening this month. Now, when we move into April of 27th through May 27th, we're going to be in your first house. Now, the first house rules your body, your appearance, first impressions, and even your style. This is your face and your head. It's really like the vehicle that you navigate the world in, right? So now this month, it's going to make sense that when we get into April, you're probably going to be feeling a little stir crazy, having gone through like a really, kind of dwelling in your own cave, so to speak. You're going to probably want to come out at that point. And keep in mind, this entire year is going to have this 12th house tendency where you're going to be away from the public eye. But at least each month you'll be experiencing kind of a new area of focus, right? With that, through that lens of the 12th house, if that makes sense. So when you go into the first house, this can mean that you actually get the urge to even change your appearance, buy something new, like a new wardrobe, or buy something that you feel you can express yourself better in. You can change up your hair or have the desire to get, a different kind of haircut, or, something like that. Usually it's impactful for the body. You just have a desire to really change things up, or even like just kind of come out of a shell. Also, the first house is very active, so it could be that after this month, you are really restless physically and you want to like actually get moving, get your body moving, and get a little, get that heart pumping and that sort of thing. You may be more craving that physical movement, something that you didn't have before the previous month, because you were just, kind of isolated. You may, however, experience some delays and frustrations because you do have this solar return Saturn in the first house. Now, these delays and frustrations, I want to point out that it may be because you may be limited, like yourself, in the sense that you feel like, oh my God, I'm going to just use this as an example. You may want to, let's say, get back to the gym or something like that you're used to doing. But because of what's going on, you're not going to be able to. Maybe it's still closed. That's just an example. But these are these little delays and frustrations that Saturn can present, where you want to do certain things for yourself, your body, your image, how you're perceived, but something is blocking and challenging you to do it. So, that's just something to kind of look at. It's going to be a prevalent theme just because you have that 12th house. Things will ease up later in the year, but I do want to say you may not be able to do everything you want, for yourself that time, because you do have that Saturn in that first house. This could even be impactful with job, like maybe you want to get back to work, or you want to do something specifically at work that you just can't. Saturn just tends to really kind of put a halt to things, and you just kind of have to surrender to that. So that can be a little frustrating, just that you want to do more than you're actually able. You may also you may feel restless, and you may want to be doing things independently, but again, you're not able to for some reason. So one thing I do want to say is just surrender and be gentle to yourself, especially to your body too, just because this year is going to be not as active. So you don't want to push yourself or push through the frustration and try to force things. So that's something to be very cautious of. Now, from March 30th, I want to point out here, to May 13th, which is going to... Hold on a minute. I wanted to just add one little thing that's going to be before this, I think, here. I do want to point out, okay, so March 30th through May 13th. So we're actually going to be through here first. So this is going to be kind of split between these homes. Saturn and Mars is going to be impacting your second house indirectly. And this is because You have Jupiter in this first house, as you can see. This is your natal Jupiter. Make sure you can see that. So this is going to be a transit that's going to happen. Jupiter is actually the ruler of your second house of finances because you have Pisces in that house, okay? So during this time, you may experience, because you're going to have Saturn and Mars, which are right here, are going to be hitting that Jupiter right there in that first house. You may experience a little bit, again, of delays when it comes to finances. Okay. And this is also the second house, which we're going to talk a little more about in a bit. Also rules just your earned income, your assets, anything that you place value on. What this means is that not only can it bring delays, but a need to slow down and reassess anything having to do with finances and your income. Sometimes with Saturn and Mars is that you may wish to move forward with something. Like that Mars is that drive, like, oh my God, I want to do this. Oh my gosh, I need to buy this. Or, you want to like move forward on something. But then Saturn, since he's there, he's like, nope, you're not ready. You have to go back and finish something up, and you have to kind of reassess, and also thinking long-term goal. Mars is all about, I want to do this. Let's get this done. I want it now. And Saturn is going to say, you know what? No, we got to work hard first, gratification later. So Saturn can put a halt to things. So this is something, again, that may come up, especially impacting your finances. Something to keep in mind with that. I just wanted to mention that date. Again, that's March 30th through May 13th. So just, you may have to complete some things before you can move forward. So again, you may feel like frustrating during this time, especially financially and personally, because it is that first house. However, after May 13, you may feel less stuck. Again, there's going to be overall some things happening here, but it's not going to be as severe. So let's move on to May 27th. Through June 27th, we are right in that second house again that we just spoke of, which again represents income, possessions, assets, savings, and spending. So as you can see, we experienced maybe a little bit of frustration back in that time that I mentioned up to May 13th, and now we're moving into that later portion of the month, which things should ease up. However, you do have Mercury and Neptune in that house, and it's ruled by Pisces, and that can also bring a little bit of a need to slow down on things. When I see Mercury and Neptune, especially in Pisces, I like to say hold off on making any big decisions involving your finances. And that is because Neptune tends to bring a little bit of confusion, a little bit of fog. There can be a little bit of lack of clarity. This can be due to what happened before, like the fog has not lifted entirely quite yet. Also, Neptune can bring a little bit of deception. So things may look pretty on the outside, but actually not be what's best for you in the long term. So just really kind of be careful with finances around this time. No big spending sprees, that sort of thing, something that you may come to regret later. Mercury in Pisces really lacks his logic and reason around money topics. Anything that's, involving numbers. Mercury doesn't like Pisces just because Pisces is more of the intuitive, creative side. Mercury really likes to crunch numbers, and he's really logical, and so he tends to kind of space out in this area. So again, just no big huge money decisions around this time wouldn't probably be the greatest thing to do. What's really important at this time, though, is for you to tune into your intuitive feelings, your gut instincts when it comes to your finances and resources. So not so much of a logical time, but listen to your gut. This is going to be very important. especially for topics around what you value, not just even like physical money, currency, but what you value yourself, including yourself, right? So that second house is very deep. So let's move on then to June 27th through July 27th. We've moved into this third house. The third house rules communications, your siblings, learning, short trips, your neighborhood, and school. So this is a great time to focus on writing or even publishing your book, as this falls under communication. You have your sun here, which can be helpful in getting you noticed when communication is involved. So again, you may get a little bit of a break here where you are, getting a little bit more heard. Excuse me. As you can see, the sun here is conjunct Black Moon Lilith. So this may bring the desire to speak your mind about issues you normally don't talk about. You may be feeling a little more confident to speak your mind, more so. And also, you can potentially even start to feel like you need to express yourself in areas that you may have been feeling oppressed and just kind of ostracized. So a lot of things kind of resurfacing at this time around communication. Sometimes Black Moon Lilith can express itself with rage, like you're like, I'm done, I'm fed up, take this, and so there can be kind of, Black Moon Lilith is an empowered feminine archetype. So she does not let anybody put her down, she does not allow anybody to keep her silent. This is really a face forward in your face type of energy. And so sometimes what I like to tell people is when Black Moon Lilith is so close to the sun here like this, you may want to journal to really express. It's like, especially if you start feeling feelings of rage and anger, like really surfacing, try to journal. Otherwise you don't want to have like all confrontation. It's not going to be pleasant for anybody. So including yourself. Of course, speak your mind. You may need to just do that. Some people may need to be told how you've been feeling and not telling them, and that's okay. That's what Black Moon Lilith is for. She's going to back you up and really give you that courage to do it. But either way, this will be a time where you just will feel more confident in expressing yourself, and that's lovely. You're not going to be sugarcoating anything around this time, and that's actually okay because she really just wants you to be heard. And also what I want to mention, both of these months coming up, so again, June 27th through July 27th and into August 27th, Saturn return. You're going to get that second hit of Saturn return. So again, that can be communicating what you need to say, even could be through your book or in dialogue with people, especially in your home private life, that Saturn is also going to be helping you with cutting away with distractions here. It could be themes picking up in family, like challenges coming up again, of discourse in family that you need to just kind of put people in their place and say, hey, stop, I'm tired of this. You got to listen to me, hear me out, that sort of thing. Saturn return, a lot of inner working here too, trying to set you up with, again, going back to what is it that you want to be focusing with your life now moving forward. So very significant time here, and there's going to be a big emphasis around the home. So I do want to point that out, that you've got that Saturn return going into the fourth house. Now this is going to be July 27th through August 27th. The fourth house rules your private life, parents, home, and family. You have Uranus in the fourth house, which can bring some unexpected changes to your private life, home, and family. Uranus tends to shake things up and also restructure things that have been outdated. So this is very significant. Sometimes Uranus can be a little uncomfortable, especially because it's right by the moon here. This could mean that something that you were feeling very secure, how can I put this? Anything that you've been really comfortable with, let's say, sometimes when we become too comfortable in something, we don't want to change that, right? Even though it may not be for our best. But Uranus kind of comes in and says, hey, I've got a better plan for you, but we're going to have to change things up that may be a little bit uncomfortable, but in the long run, you're going to thank me for. So either can, expect maybe a little bit of changes happening here. Just because you do have Uranus there. Sometimes this even means that Uranus going through the fourth house can indicate even issues like with the actual home, like your water heater goes out and you need to buy another one, something like that, like unexpected, like, oh my God, I did not expect for this to happen. But then again, let's say it's like 10 years old and it needs to be fixed anyway, so that you're not dealing with this in the middle of winter, right? That's coming this year. So it's necessary things that need to be taken care of. So again, I don't want this to alarm you, but I just want to say, sometimes Uranus can just bring those kind of unexpected changes that we're just like, oh my God, let's get this over with. But Uranus always tends to leave you better than how you were. So I just want to really emphasize that. Again, that Saturn return is still going in through that fourth house at this time. So again, maybe changes are made in the home to put you more in alignment with your life path and what you're going to be doing in this new phase of your life. So a lot of change here, and I think for the better with that Saturn there, and also Uranus, Black Moon Lilith here. It can be an intense time, but a very much needed time. So I do want to point that out. So another thing, both Black Moon, Lilith, and Uranus are square to your Time Lord here. These two right here. This is called a square. Now, this is going to potentially bring some added frustrations and delays as well. So again, Saturn can tend to do that, but at the same time, this is a transition year. So meaning you may not be getting everything you want in this area of life at this time, but know that it is a work in progress and things will smooth out as the year progresses. Venus is also in that fourth house. Interestingly, this is a similar aspect that's found in your natal chart. As you can see, you have Venus here, and it's also square Saturn. So these may, some themes that you have encountered through life that are Saturn Venus themes that I'm going to talk about may resurface, especially because we've got Venus in that fourth house. So what this means essentially, Venus, hold on, I want to make sure I don't leave anything out. You may not even notice this because you're so used to this energy. I'm just hesitant to say that it's going to be a big deal, only because it's something that is kind of an ongoing theme, but it is worth mentioning. So Venus square Saturn can sometimes, it has pros and cons. It can bring frustrations around relationships, feeling loved, feeling affection, feeling sometimes Saturn with Venus, Saturn is very limiting, can be very harsh. Venus just wants to be loved, right? Venus is the goddess of love and beauty. So with Saturn, it can bring commitment, which is great, very committed. But also there needs to be some adjustment. There's constant need for adjustment because, again, Saturn can be a little harsh to Venus. And so sometimes there are issues with actual relationships that need to be worked out. This may be something that's addressed at this time, especially for your Saturn return happening here, that you're kind of trying to implement something different in your life that's going to work better for you, and you feeling loved, you feeling respected, you feeling like you have equality, in your relationship on many levels. So a lot of things, what I think about this is a lot of things may kind of resurface where, a good time for finding balance and harmony is needed, especially with relationships in the home. So family, right? So even the people who aren't under your roof, but your family. So this can be a time where a lot of these issues kind of resurface and you are dealing with them directly. So, not exactly super comfortable, but also needed, right? So again, this can bring kind of tensions that will need to be dealt with and adjustments in order to restore that harmony. And this again is an ongoing theme in your natal chart. So, it may indicate challenges from the past that resurface within the family as well. But again, it may not be a big deal to you because it's something that you're used to. Just because of that, you have that square already natally. All right, so let's move on to the next house, August 27th through September 27th. We have the 5th house. Now, the 5th house rules children, romance, pleasure, creativity, and good fortune. As you can see, you have your ascendant here. The ascendant usually is in the 1st house, as you can see here in your natal chart. But what I like to see, wherever the ascendant of the solar return chart falls, tends to be almost like the cover of, if you were to write a book about your life this year, this would be on the cover. So interestingly, it falls in the 5th house. So of course, what comes up to mind is children, right? So children are going to play a dominant theme for this year, okay? So that could be that why the focus is away from you being this 12th house and you're taking care of, let's say, children, right? And even babies, right? That comes under that 5th house. It just means that your children, what you've created, are going to be potentially demanding more attention of you. So again, this could also be, you may not feel like you're achieving your personal goals, and that's because you're taking care of something else that's taking a priority. And also, this could be a good month for your creative pursuits, because what you create, like your book, is also part of the 5th house. So even if you have like a hobby or something like that, that is something that you may be doing. And also something you're experiencing around this time, again, that's August 27th through September 27th. So going into fall, big emphasis on children, and even going into October. So really fall is big focus on children there being a priority. So let's move on to September 27th through October 27th. This is the 6th house, which rules your work, day-to-day routine, your pets, and your health. You have the North Lunar Node, which is right here, and the Lot of Fortune in this house. These are both auspicious points to have in this house. The North Node talks about divine timing, being at the right place at the right time, feeling like you're back on track when it comes to what you have been wanting to do. So after the heaviness of this, once you get into later fall, things should start easing up for you, at least a little bit here. So this is really nice. The Lot of Fortunes, excuse me, let me get a sip of water here. The Lot of Fortune speaks of luck, so good things happening to you unexpectedly around these 6th house topics. Things should be lightening up. Frustrations from earlier in the year should start to fade, if not disappear entirely. So this is going to be good, again, with your day-to-day routine, your work life. Health should be very good also, because that falls into the 6th house. Pets, enjoying your pets, unexpected good things with pets. All of that falls under that theme. And this is just kind of probably like the first, like, yay, really nice, fun time, right? After the heaviness that you've experienced. Let's move into October 27th through November 27th. We are in the 7th house, which rules relationships, marriage, and one-to-one relationships like client/patient relationships. So you may notice relationship topics resurface, or surface, I should say, around this time, but not anything too serious or worth going over. There aren't any major transits, so it's actually not a busy house for this year. No major aspects are occurring, and this is actually good. It's not always bad, because if we have a lot going on, that can bring more potential drama, and I think the heaviness earlier the year you've probably experienced around this time. This time, at least, you're kind of getting a break starting from this time. So fall, I really anticipate a much better time for you. And especially regarding relationships, things seem to be just better overall. We spent a lot of time talking about these because a lot's happening, and there's not much activity. So I'm kind of going through these a little quicker. Okay, so December 27th, I'm sorry, no, let's see. November 27th, then through December 27th, we are in that 8th house and also going through your last Saturn return or portion of it. And also, Jupiter is going to transit natal Saturn. A lot is happening around this time. Now, I do want to say the 8th house rules taxes, death, inheritance, and shared resources and assets that are shared with your spouse. So, shared resources. I know death is a scary word. This is just the house that rules it. Sometimes you get an inheritance because, somebody passes away. It doesn't mean that that's happening to you. I mention it because it's also a house of rebirth, right? So, one thing that's happening here that's very relevant is you are going to have at this time Jupiter, let me go back here, is going to transit your natal Saturn. So again, here's Saturn. Let's go back here. Jupiter is going to be hitting that natal Saturn at this time, okay? So I know it's kind of weird, but I do want to say it's relevant because Jupiter tends to bring gifts, tends to bring opportunities, tends to really kind of open our path that was once closed, right? It's kind of a road opener, gives us the ability to grow and to do something fun, something different, right? That's going to lend to our growth. So this is going to be actually a good time for you with that Jupiter there. It's also the last part of your Saturn return. Saturn's going to be hitting that natal Saturn. So this may be a time where you actually get that break where you're finally like, oh my God, the heaviness of the year has faded away. Now I can focus on myself again and kind of get things moving that I've been wanting to do. And also just kind of put you back on track. And again, this is also a money house, shared resources. So it could also mean that things are back on track financially like you wanted them to be, especially involving your partner, because this is of shared resources, or again, like I said, inheritances. Things just overall are going to be a little better. Saturn, again, at this time, it could be investments are made. Saturn wants you to think for your long-term goal now that you've entered this new phase of life. Saturn says, hey, plan ahead. Do you have enough money for you to retire with? Kind of those themes may come up at this time. So just kind of pay attention to those. But I really do think that it's going to have a nice kind of vibe to it, only because Jupiter is going to be impacting your Saturn. So this is good. This will be a good time. So let's go ahead and move into December of 27 through January 27th of 2021. We've finally moved into that 9th house. The 9th house rules travel, wisdom, foreign places and people, philosophy, study, religion, and it's also considered the house of God. Now, Mars is going to be opposite your 9th house and conjunct your natal Venus, which is right here. So Mars is going to be moving through this house at this time, so they're opposite of each other. Mars, what's lovely about this is that Mars is your motivation. It's the energy that you need. It's a driving force that propels you forward. Now, because it's going to be going through your 3rd house of communication, it's going to be opposite your house of publishing. That the 9th house is rules publishing. So this could be you being back on track with writing your book or even having it published. Something dealing with that, especially after Saturn or after Pluto. After Jupiter hit your Saturn, there could be an opportunity that was given to you last month, right? Maybe like you met somebody to help you move forward with your book. These are just examples, but just something to kind of see how things are finally opening up for you. You may have felt kind of stuck in that earlier part of the year, and now finally you're getting your breaks, right? So things are just going back to normal and smoothing out for you. So this is great. Also, Mars being over here opposite the ninth house could give you the courage to venture out and do something completely foreign to you, because it is the house of foreigners. Maybe you take a trip, just something different. Just watch out for that, because that's going to be a good time. This is all a good time coming up for you. Now, moving from January 27th through February 27th, we move into your 10th house, which rules your career, reputation, success, fame, and life path. This could be a time where your focus shifts back to your life path and career. So you're stepping more in line with your goals and pursuits that you've had, but because you've perfected into that 12th house where you've kind of been experiencing distractions, you're kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and getting back on track, especially with your life path. It doesn't have to be your actual day job that you have, but you being more on track, especially after the turn of events that have happened here, new opportunities presenting themselves, putting you more in alignment with your life's purpose. So this is very relevant, a great time. Again, that's January 27th through February 27th of next year, so of 2021. Then moving into February 27th through March 27th of 2021, we move into the 11th house. This is the house of friends and groups of people who support you. This is the house of your alliances and also of good luck. So this is going to be a good time to really connect with your tribe. You may feel more social to do that and get out and network with like-minded souls who support your cause and who you support theirs. So this will be the last house you will complete for this solar return. There aren't any major transits happening with that 11th house, but as you can see, you've really kind of moved through the heavy part of this year, and then really into the late fall, into winter, into the beginning of next year is going to be a much smoother ride. I do want to point that out. Then right after that, obviously you'll have your next birthday, which then you'll be perfecting into the first house because you've gone through that 12th. So I really think this year again is really a transitional year. You're not probably going to feel like you're going to get a whole lot done for yourself, but that's okay. There's a lot of things that need to be taken care of before you can move forward. I think beginning of next year, but again, starting at late fall into winter especially, and into the beginning of next year are going to be far more rewarding and lighter in energy. Just like the vibe is going to lighten up for you. So I hope you enjoyed your reading. I want to thank you for requesting a solar return. This chart I'm going to scan and send over to you so you can kind of have the dates out here so you can kind of follow those. And then I'll also include a chart where it kind of gives you the topics. So I wish you a beautiful, happy birthday solar return. I hope you are doing something fun, at least at home with Tessa. And I will talk to you soon. One last thing I do want to mention, and we can talk about this more if you wish, but because you have a Saturn ruled year, I had these crystals out. This is a gold sheen obsidian. Any dark stone crystal is really going to help you. This is a smoky quartz, and these dark crystals, obsidian, what else is the smoky quartz, and what are some of the other ones? Oh, I can't think of them right now. Dark crystals are really going to help you this year. So if you don't have them already, I would recommend ordering some, kind of keeping them close to you. They'll kind of keep you more in aligned with Saturn's energies to help you navigate the year with greater ease. So that's just something I did want to mention really quickly. And okay, so that concludes your reading. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, and I would be happy to answer those for you. So take care. Happy birthday. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.